You log into your LSAC account, you click your August LSAT score, and your stomach drops. This can't be right. You were scoring 170 and above on your practice tests, and you were ready, you felt sharp. But your official score is way lower than you expected. You're confused, you're angry, maybe you're even feeling panicked. So you go on Reddit, and you scroll around and you see post after post from other test takers who are saying the same thing. One says, my score dropped 10 points. Another says, did LSAC mess up? But let me tell you the truth, calmly, clearly, and without sugarcoating anything. No, LSAC probably didn't mess up your score. But that doesn't mean you messed up either. Let's break this down. But before we go any further, let's get something out of the way. There are a lot of people online giving LSAT advice. Some of them are students who took the test once. Some just repost old Reddit threads. And some are trying to reverse engineer what must have worked without ever having taught a real student in their life. Of course, that's not me. My name is Steve Schwartz. I've been teaching the LSAT since 2005, and I brought my own score from a 152 to a 175. But honestly, that's not really the impressive part. The impressive part is this. I've helped thousands of students, literally thousands, do the same. I've worked with students who bombed the LSAT 3 times and still ended up at top 14 law schools. I've helped students who started off in the 140s and broke into the 170s with the right system. And I've helped students who had testing anxiety so bad they couldn't sleep the night before. Why does this matter? Because everything I'm about to share with you in this video doesn't come from theory. It comes from real patterns I've seen over and over again. For example, what happens when someone's test score doesn't match their practice tests? What actually causes those big drops on test day? And what separates those who bounce back from those who give up? And that's what this video is built on. Hard-earned lessons from 20 years in the trenches. So if your August LSAT score shook your confidence, if you feel like you're alone, broken, or something went wrong and you just can't figure out what, know that I've seen it before, I've helped students work through it, and I can help you do the same. But you've got to be willing to stop guessing and start looking at what actually happened. So let's tackle the big question directly. Did LSAC mess up your score? The short answer is almost certainly not. And here's why. The LSAT is not graded by a single human sitting in a cubicle, casually glancing at your test while sipping a latte. It's an automated, heavily audited, and deeply standardized process. There are layers of quality control built into every step. We're talking here about calibrated scoring algorithms, data checks across thousands of test takers, and internal reviews by psychometricians, and yes, that's a real word, along with post-test analysis to catch anything that looks off. And to top it off, LSAC is one of the most bureaucratic organizations on the planet. If there were a legitimate scoring error, they would not just shrug and move on. They would be forced to issue a correction, alert law schools, and likely it'd end up in the news. So ask yourself this. If LSAC really did mess up the scoring for thousands of students, where are the news stories? Where are the mass emails? And where's the class action lawsuit? You're not seeing any of that because this isn't a systemic scoring failure. It's something else, something a lot more subtle and way more common. Now, I get it. It feels like your score is wrong, and it feels like something must have glitched. But before we go all into conspiracy mode, let's consider a simpler explanation. Maybe your score was real, but your expectations were off. Maybe something about the test hit you harder than you expected. Maybe the problem wasn't in the scoring, but it was in the preparation. Let's be brutally honest for a minute. Every single LSAT, a wave of students feel blindsided. They were hitting high scores on their practice tests, but the official score didn't reflect that. And when that happens, the natural instinct is to blame the scoring. But that instinct can be dangerous because it distracts you from the one thing you can control, what you do next. So no, LSAC didn't randomly tank your score, but if you're still not convinced, that's okay, because I'm going to show you exactly what's happening and how to fix it. Now first, let's talk about forums and the impact they have on your brain. Reddit is warping your reality. I'm not saying the people posting on Reddit today are lying. I'm saying the nature of the platform itself, the structure, the incentives, and the way we engage with it all distorts your perceptions. You log in after getting your score. You're shocked. You're confused. You're looking for answers, and naturally, you type something like August LSAT score lower than expected. And suddenly, you're reading dozens, maybe hundreds of comments all saying exactly the same thing. Someone says they got a 10-point drop and they're feeling sick. Someone else says they were PTing in the 170s and only got a 160. So it feels like the LSAT world is on fire. But here's what you need to understand. This is a classic case of selection bias. Selection bias means you're only seeing a tiny slice of the population, but that slice is not representative of the whole. For example, there might be 30,000 people taking the LSAT the same cycle as you, and most of them are not on Reddit. Most of them don't post there, and most of them aren't talking about their scores publicly at all. So who is posting? The people who feel something extreme. That's it. You only hear from those who crushed it and want to flex, and those who bombed it and want answers. No one logs in to say, hey guys, I got a 161. That's about what I expected. Cool, I'll see you in the fall. Why? Because that's boring. It doesn't spark comments. It's not noteworthy, not going to get upvotes, doesn't feel urgent. But when you see 100 people all saying, I dropped 10 points, your brain reads that as everybody dropped 10 points, which of course is false. That's the nature of social media. It shows you a loud, extreme, unrepresentative sample of the population, and your brain treats it like the average, like it's the norm. So if you're doom scrolling and you're thinking, maybe LSAC really did mess this up, everyone's saying so, stop right there. No, not everyone is saying that, just the ones who feel like something went wrong. The silent majority, those whose scores lined up with their practice tests, aren't making any noise. They're just moving on with their applications. So you've got to zoom out. The forums are not giving you accurate data. They're giving you emotion. And emotion is a terrible way to analyze what actually happened. So I want you to change your approach here. Treat Reddit like what it is, a place to vent, not a place to gather facts. Stop comparing your worst day to someone else's highlight reel or their own meltdown post. Focus on your own data, not the noise of the crowd. This is one of the hardest lessons to learn in LSAT prep, but also one of the most liberating. Because once you stop trying to make sense of your score through those Reddit posts, you can finally start making sense of it through reality. Now, the second factor you've got to consider is that score inflation is real. The LSAT scale has changed. Not in a massive headline-making way, but subtly, slowly, over time. And if you've been using those older prep tests, like from the 2000s or even the early 2010s, you've been playing with an outdated rulebook. Here's what's actually happening. Law school admissions has gotten way more competitive. The T14 law schools have steadily raised their LSAT medians. What used to be impressive is now just average. A couple of years back, a 173 would have been a 99th percentile score. Now, you've got to get a 175 to be in that same percentile. And that's not because you've gotten dumber. It's not because the test got harder. It's because more people are prepping seriously. And the LSAT curve adjusts to that. So let me show you how this messes people up. Let's say you took prep test 62 from 2011 and you got 90 questions right. The raw to scaled conversion says that's a 170, which is great. But then you take the August LSAT. You get the same number of questions right and you only get a 166. Suddenly, you're convinced LSAC messed up. You're saying to yourself, it doesn't make sense because I got the same raw score. But it's not the same test environment. The scaled score is relative, not absolute. It depends on how everyone else did, not just you. And right now, everyone else includes more high scorers than ever. This is what we call score inflation, and it is the silent killer of LSAT confidence. Might not be dramatic or obvious, but it absolutely explains why you might feel like your score dropped even if your performance stayed consistent. So what can you do about it? You've got to update your reference points. If you're using old prep tests on the old numbering scale from before the removal of logic games as your only metric, you are underestimating how much the curve has tightened. So instead, I want you to focus on prep tests 40 to 158, the newer ones, for a more accurate read, and pay attention to scaled score trends, not just the raw numbers. And know that a good score today might have been great 5 years ago, and plan accordingly. And know that you are not underperforming. You're just playing in a more competitive pool. And the sooner you understand that, the sooner you can adapt your strategy to this version of the LSAT, not the one that existed a decade ago. Now, another important factor, and this one might sting a little, is that most students accidentally train for the easiest possible version of the LSAT, not the real thing, not the brutal, no excuses, full pressure, test day version that actually determines your score. Let me show you what I mean. Ask yourself honestly, did you consistently take full-length 4-section exams with only one break in the middle? Did you follow the exact time limits with no pauses or resets when things went sideways? Did you train in a distraction-free environment with no music, no snacks, no phone notifications, no roommate noise? Or did your practice tests look more like just the 3 scored sections because you think to yourself, the unscored extra section doesn't really count anyway? Did you take breaks after every section because you were tired or you needed coffee? Did you review answers right after each section, which of course you can't do on test day? Please be honest, because how you train is how you perform. And if you're training in softer, easier conditions, your practice scores are going to lie to you. So here's what happens. You're scoring 170 plus on easy mode practice tests. You feel great, confident, maybe even unstoppable. Then test day comes and it wrecks you. That 4th section, yes, the unscored one, is a trap. Not because it's hard, but because it's extra. It burns mental fuel. It disrupts your pacing. It tests your focus. And by the time you get to your real final section, maybe reasoning, maybe reading comp, your tank is empty. And if you haven't practiced with your tank running on fumes, you're gonna crash fast. Now add the bonus stressors, the knowledge of knowing it's the real thing, proctor interruptions, tech issues, bad sleep the night before, the fact that you care, which raises your adrenaline. Those are all performance killers. Not because you're not smart, but because your prep didn't match the real conditions. So how do you fix this? You train for war. That means 4-section tests every single time. The same 10-minute break you get on the real test, no extra minutes, no checking your phone. You simulate the room, same lighting, same seating, same time of day, and you remove every single crutch. No snacks outside the break. No looking up answers. No, I'll just pause for a second. Because if you practice soft, the test feels hard. But if you practice hard, the test becomes just another rep. This is where the serious LSAT gains happen. Not in doing more logical reasoning or reading comp passages, but in building the mental endurance to survive the entire test under pressure. You don't need more practice problems, you just need better reps under real conditions, and that starts now. Now let's talk about something most people completely ignore, because it's not on your LSAT syllabus and you can't bubble it in. Test day stress is a multiplier. It doesn't just make you feel worse, but it directly impacts your performance. And here's the key. Even if you did everything right in your prep, even if you drilled every question type, even if your practice scores were rock solid, none of that guarantees test day will go smoothly, because stress doesn't test your logic skills. It tests your sleep habits, nutrition, tech setup, emotional regulation, ability to recover from curveballs, and tolerance for silence, pressure, and unpredictability. Let me give you a few real-world examples I've seen over and over again. You got the proctor who interrupts your test because they think your idea is blurry. You've got the internet lag that freezes your screen mid-logical reasoning. You've got the neighbor's lawnmower that starts buzzing during reading comp. And you've got that moment of panic when you get bogged down on a question and now you're rushing. Any one of those on your own, you could probably manage. But if you stack 2 or 3 together, suddenly you're no longer working at 100%. You're operating at 80% or 60% or less. And that shows up in your score. But here's what most students get wrong. They chalk it up to bad luck. They'll say to themselves, the test just didn't go my way, or I got unlucky with the proctor, or I was tired, but I'll do better next time. That kind of thinking is passive, and it leaves you vulnerable to the exact same stress the next time around. What you need is stress proofing, because stress isn't optional, it's guaranteed. So your job isn't to hope for a better experience, your job is to prepare for it. And here's how you do it. First, you want to start your full-length exams at the same time your actual test will start. Secondly, you want to sleep 8 hours the night before every single practice test. You also want to practice under noisy, imperfect conditions sometimes. You want to rehearse your tech setup and you want to build a recovery routine. Because the most successful LSAT students aren't the ones with perfect conditions. They're the ones who trained to adapt. You cannot eliminate stress, but you can control how much it takes from you. And if your August score felt like a punch to the gut, there's a good chance it wasn't your logic that failed, it was your stress plan. But the good news is you can fix that starting now. And so, if you opened your score, felt the gut punch, scrolled Reddit, questioned your entire prep strategy, now you're here, that's good. It means you're ready to stop spiraling and start doing something about it. Because here's the truth. A disappointing LSAT score is not the end of the road. It's just a diagnostic report. Of course, a brutally honest one, but it shows you where the gaps are in your prep. And that makes this moment incredibly powerful. So let's walk through exactly what to do next. First step is an emotional reset. Let yourself react. Seriously. Take a day or two and just feel the disappointment. Cry, scream, vent to your group chat, write a Reddit post, rip up your test printouts, whatever you need. But give that grief a deadline, because once you've let it out, it's time to get back to work. Because clarity doesn't come from panic, it comes from action. Then your next step is decide if you should retake. And the short answer for 90% of students is yes, you should retake. Law schools only care about your highest LSAT score. That is it. They do not average multiple scores. They're not going to penalize you for taking it twice or even 3 times or even 5. So if you're asking, what if I already took it twice? What if this is my 3rd attempt? What if my score dropped? The answer is yes, yes, yes. If you think you can improve with better prep. And spoiler alert, you can improve with better prep. Which brings us to the 3rd step. Audit your previous prep. This is the most important and most skipped step. Don't just sign up for the next test date and start taking more practice tests. That is not a strategy, that's panic. You've got to figure out what went wrong. Ask yourself, which section do I think dragged down my score? Be specific. Was it reading comp or was it logical reasoning? Ask, did I train with 4 section exams or just 3? Did I actually review every wrong answer or just glance and move on? Was I tracking time per section, time per question? And did I prep for the pressure of test itself or just the questions? Write all of this down and build a post-mortem of your prep. This is how you start coaching yourself, like a real student, not just a test taker flying blind. Then, step 4, build a new system based on what you missed. Because you don't need more LSAT hours, you need better LSAT hours. And here's what that looks like. Full-length exams every single week with 4 sections, timed, same structure as the real thing. You also want focused drills by question type. If you're missing necessary assumption questions, you've got to have a strategy, not just random practice. Also, keep a wrong answer journal. Every time you miss a question, write down why you picked the wrong answer, why the right one was better, and what you'll look for next time. You also want stamina training. You don't want to just build logic skills, you want to build focus, pacing, and recovery under pressure. Then step 5, track everything like a scientist. Create a spreadsheet where you track the date of every test, your raw score and your scaled score, section breakdowns, timing per section, missed question types, and notes on energy, focus, and distractions. Because you can't improve what you're not measuring. You're not guessing anymore here, you are running an experiment with yourself as the test subject. Then step 6, simulate tests again and again. Stop treating the official LSAT like some sacred once-in-a-lifetime event. It's just another test, and it should feel that way. So practice like it's real. 10-minute break after section 2, no extra time. Same time of day as your real test. No phones, no background noise, no pausing if I need it. And if you're taking it remotely from home, set up the same testing environment. By the time your next test day rolls around, you should feel like you've done it 10 times already. No surprises, no panic, just execution. Let me show you what this actually looks like in real life. A few months ago, I worked with a student named Chris. Super sharp, motivated, disciplined. When he came to me, he had just gotten his official LSAT score back, a 153. He was crushed. This was a guy who'd been practice testing in the mid-160s. His best practice score before test day was a 167. He thought a 160 was his floor. Then, test day hit and dropped him 14 points. His first reaction was, of course, LSAC must have messed up my score. Totally understandable. He felt like he'd been blindsided. He even contacted LSAC to ask if there had been a scoring glitch. Spoiler, there wasn't. But when we took a closer look at what had happened, here's what we found. He'd only taken 3 section practice tests, never 4. He never timed his breaks. He always checked answers during the test, which of course you can't do on test day. He skipped breakfast on test day, and midway through his exam, his proctor interrupted him to ask a question, which totally threw him off. That's 5 different things right there, and none of them are about logic or ability. All of them are about execution under pressure. So we rebuilt everything around his test day strategy. Full 4-section tests, strict break timing, morning routines designed to replicate test day, drills based on the exact types he was missing, and debriefs after every practice to isolate what drained his stamina. 3 months later, he retook the LSAT and scored a 171. That's an 18-point improvement. Same test, same student, totally different system. Now, of course, disclaimer, your results may vary. Chris's results were not typical and required significant changes to his prep system, daily routines, and stress management strategies. Not every student will see the same improvement, and in fact, most students do nothing and their scores stay low. There are no guarantees. But this story does show what's possible when you replace guesswork with data and emotion with strategy. So if you're sitting there thinking, maybe I just don't have what it takes, let this be proof. It's not about your raw intelligence. It's about how well you prepared for the real test. And once you start training like the test is real, that's when the results finally start to reflect your true potential. So let's zoom all the way out. The LSAT is not an IQ test. It's not about how naturally good you are at arguments or reading dense passages. It is a performance test, which means your score reflects your systems, your habits, your stress response, and your prep strategy, not your intelligence or your worth. And that's good news, because if you bombed the August LSAT, that doesn't mean you're broken. It means the plan you were following wasn't built for game day. And most people never figure this out. They either give up after one bad score, keep retaking the test using the exact same broken approach, or they scroll Reddit for 3 months hoping to see someone else say, yeah, this cycle was just unfair. But that's not going to get you into law school. What will? Owning the data, diagnosing the problem, and rebuilding your prep like a scientist, not a gambler. Your August LSAT score was not a final verdict. It was just another data point. And now you get to decide, will you use that data to build a smarter system, or will you keep doing the same thing and expect a different result? This is the moment that separates the average from the elite. Let's go.